What's up, Taiwan? I'm Liao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's two biggest political parties are going on tour. The Kuomintang and Democratic Progressive Party are holding a series of events across the country to convince voters that they deserve control of Taiwan's legislature. Two political parties, two recall movements, one legislature. The opposition Kuomintang, in coalition with the smaller Taiwan People's Party, has a majority over the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, leading to deadlocks over everything from the judiciary to the country's budget. Disagreements have boiled over, with civic groups initiating recall movements to take down lawmakers on both sides. The KMT and DPP are now stepping in to defend their legislators. At a DPP event in Hualien, a traditionally KMT-leaning area, the party said the KMT's budget cuts are detrimental to the government's functioning, and it wants to give control back to the people. But for the KMT, which faces nearly 36 recall motions against their legislators, they say keeping their lawmakers in office will stop the ruling party from overspending taxpayers' money. Both the DPP and KMT are touring the country, telling two sides of the same story. At stake is the country's legislature, but the decision will ultimately rest with the people. Patrick Chen, Justin Wu, Hank Xu, and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus. Amid growing threats from China, more people in Taiwan are stepping up to protect their country, turning to civil defense groups for training. Sandy Chi takes us to a weekend drill in Taipei.
From mass casualty treatment to air raid response, evasion tactics and shelter location exercises. This is the 5th Blue Magpie operation, a civil defense exercise, aiming to prepare Taiwan citizens for potential wartime emergencies and disasters. This drill in Taipei, organized by the non-profit Kuma Academy, is part of an ongoing effort to prepare the public for a worst-case scenario. Taiwan faces growing threats from China and is also prone to natural disasters like earthquakes and typhoons. The Civil Defense Group regularly trains civilians in basic first aid, evacuation planning, spotting disinformation from China, and cybersecurity.
我们是文山区的一个民防自训团体，我们平常就有在做基本的急救训练、野外求生，然后我们借由每一次的黑熊训练、黑熊学院的训练行动啊，我们把它当成一个复习，然后自我检验一下。
This year, over 100 people participated, the highest number since Kuma Academy started such exercises in 2023. And those who are new to this kind of training say it's a valuable lesson.
就感觉未来遇到的突发状况，或许还要再考虑到家人或者是宠物之类，应该会比今天的还要更复杂。但今天的都这么疲于应付的话，感觉我还有很多功课要做。
The government is also stepping up efforts to strengthen civil defense, with the goal of training 100,000 civilians as disaster prevention specialists by 2025. And more people take part in these drills. The hope is to build a stronger and more prepared public. Kamashu and Tanichi for TaiwanPlus.
Catholics in Rome and around the world have welcomed the news that Pope Francis is set to be released from hospital on Sunday.
Sí, estoy muy feliz porque bueno, es una buena noticia que vuelva a casa y que bueno, que me parece algo grandioso.
Sì, è vero, è una grande gioia per noi tutti fedeli, per noi tutti che in ogni sera siamo venuti qua per preghiera e adesso abbiamo ricevuto una grande notizia, una grande gioia.
The Vatican said the Pope would make a public appearance from his hospital room before he is discharged. It will be his first appearance since he was hospitalized with double pneumonia 5 weeks ago. Pope Francis's medical team says he will need at least 2 months of rest at the Vatican. Thousands of Indonesian students took to the streets last week protesting a move that will allow military officers to serve in the government. Those who support the amendment say that it will help secure the country's national security. But critics are worried it will lead to a backsliding to Indonesia's authoritarian days. To learn more, Gino Lopez spoke to Daisy Simanjuntak from the IC's Yusof Ishak Institute based in Singapore.
So what can we expect from the Prabowo administration now that the amendment to Indonesia's military law of 2004 has been passed?
I see a strengthening of the military over the civilian leadership, going forward. And this is disconcerting. The revision of the military law was the initiative of the parliament and not of the commander of the armed forces. Right? So this is bewildering. If we go deeper here, the question would be, when these military officers commit corruption or fraud or other offenses connected to their civilian positions, will they be tried in civilian or military courts? This is one of the fundamental questions if we are to establish civilian supremacy in a democratic country.
Indonesia developed into a democratic society after the downfall of the Suharto regime in 1998. What impact will these new legal amendments have on the country's democracy?
This revision, right, of the military law is one in a string of new laws or law revisions or policies that pose a challenge to the fundamental basis of Indonesia's democracy in general. The silver lining is, we have to have a silver lining, right, in all situations, that this situation actually strengthens civil society in Indonesia. Civil society is, interestingly, the one keeping the checks and balances mechanism still working in Indonesia, albeit from outside of the system, and in a time when democratic institutions are severely weakened.
Are there any other ways civil society can ensure accountability of military officials in the civilian government?
I think the first thing I expect that the civil society would consider to ask for a judicial review from the Constitutional Court, especially because we know that the parliament had not followed the principle of meaningful participation during their deliberation of the bill, which should have adequately included the society, right? Another way also is to continue critically observing and protesting. Continuing being vigilant is important, but of course it would take a lot of civil society energy. But we don't have any other choice. This is important for Indonesia's democracy going forward.
That was Daisy Simanjuntak from the IC's Yusof Ishak Institute. In Bangkok, a 9-year-old boy is trying his hand at body art. The young tattooist is making his public debut, and his father hopes that the craft will help his son avoid some traps of modern childhood. Joyce Sung reports.
Elaborate fanged serpent is not the work of a veteran tattoo artist, but of 9-year-old Napat Mitmakon. He's debuting on the tattoo scene at a body art expo in Bangkok, where one of his first customers is his uncle.
ก่อนที่จะมาให้สักคือเราเห็นเขาสักมาแล้วสักมาเยอะแล้วก็เลยไว้ใจให้มาสัก
Keeping his hands steady, Napat calmly draws with the tattoo machine, something he picked up to deal with a common problem among modern kids, spending too much time on his phone.
ตอนนั้นแบตหมดไม่รู้ว่าจะทำอะไรก็เลยเห็นพ่อนั่งฝึกสักอยู่ผมก็เลยขอพ่อสักครับ
An amateur tattooist himself, Napat's father, Natawut Sangtong, was eager to get his son off his phone, but says he did not have to force Napat to get into tattoo art. His son would practice for hours on his own, first learning from TikTok tutorials, then practicing designs with his father on paper, before moving on to artificial leather and then human skin.
สักมันไม่ใช่แค่สักครับ มันยังมีการวาดรูป ฝึกวาดรูปเพื่อฝึกสมาธิไปด้วยครับผม
For now, Napat tattoos for his family and friends. His father says accepting other customers would need more rigorous training. Napat showing nothing but excitement for the future of his craft.
ไม่ค่อยยากครับไม่ชอบด้วย
Although he's just one of almost 200 artists at this expo, Napat is already standing out and gaining some fans, admiring his precision and fearless mastery of body art. Ryan Wu and Joyce Sin for TaiwanPlus.
As the effects of climate change wreak havoc across the globe, many people are already feeling the devastating consequences. As Jonathan Kaplan reports, Mongolia's traditional way of life for hundreds of generations might not exist much longer.
On the Mongolian steppe, livestock herder Zandan Kramsuren tends to what's left of his flock. A year ago, he had over 700 animals, including horses, cows, goats, and sheep. Then winter came.
Турван болтой мал маань хүрээд бололцоод байдаг байсан. Ноднгийн байгалийн давтшгүй хүчин зүйлд их малын хоргодуулсан.
He estimates 60 to 70% of his animals died. None of the horses or cows survive. The long, harsh winter, buried in snow, the grass his animals feed on. They starved and then froze. Zandan Ktamsuren's livestock weren't the only ones. Over 7 million animals are thought to have died in last winter's Dzud, one of the worst in recorded history. Mongolians have lived off the land for centuries. Nomadic herding, once Mongolia's predominant occupation, is still practiced by roughly a third of the country's 3.5 million people. But that is rapidly changing. Nearly half of Mongolians now live in its one major city, capital Ulaanbaatar. Every year, more arrive, seeking opportunities of modern life and refuge from an increasingly difficult pastoral existence. And as the climate continues to change, the trend of urbanization is certain to continue.
Compared to other countries, Mongolia is considered very, very vulnerable to climate change effects. Over the last 80 years, Mongolia's average temperature has reached increased by 2.5 degrees Celsius, so which is at least 3 times than the global average.
The overall warming trend has brought hotter, drier summers and desertification, and longer, snowier winters of mass animal starvation. Past generations of Mongolians relied on a stable climate cycle to survive and prosper. Today, the absence of that stability is upending traditional life for many. How much longer Mongolia's nomadic herders can continue their traditional way of life is anyone's guess. But it is certain that these people will be forced to adapt to survive on a changing planet. Chris Ma and Jonathan Kaplan for TaiwanPlus.
And we'd like to thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, join us at this Lithuanian opera performance of Sun and Sea in Bogota, where it's delighting Colombian fans. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.